Alright, we ready? Hello, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. How are we doing today? An exciting day of Illuvium so far here, of course. IPL 500 Sit Go Qualifiers currently in progress. We had the one session already happen a little bit earlier, a couple hours ago. And that on top of the chaos, which is everybody trying to figure out who's actually qualifying in the first place, keeping everybody excited and whatnot, and all those players that are very, very cautious are on the bubble, looking to play into this next one. And very, very excited. We're going to hop into it in a couple of minutes here, into a few games. Probably have enough time for 2 or 3. Should be pretty close to being able to complete the session itself. However, I do not want to necessarily speculate as to who makes it because there's so many variables. I tried to do that last week, and I ended up giving false information, so I do not want to try and do that again here. We will let the Illuvium social medias and Discords handle that portion. Once I see the announcement, I'll gladly retweet it or repost it. But in terms of me speculating who gets in or not, I'll hold my tongue on that part, at least for now. And then a few people were wondering, why am I not actually competing in the IPL 500? If I'm so heavily into Illuvium, why am I not competing? Well, there's two things. Firstly, I get my fulfillment with Illuvium, with gaming in general, with esports in general, as the commentator, the entertainer of sorts, or your informer, just getting the word out there and having a good time. Personally, for me, competing usually ends up the same way. I end up wherever the middle ground is in the results. That is probably where you're gonna find me. I'm not the person to like go 0-2 in a bracket and fall out, but I'm probably that guy who ends up going like 2-2 and gets knocked out. So I have fun competing, don't get me wrong, but I get more enjoyment as a caster and streamer. Which is why number 2, which I am extremely excited to talk about, is that you'll actually see me on Illuvium stream tomorrow. I get the opportunity to cast for sure Saturday. We'll see about Sunday. I'm pretty certain Sunday as well, but gotta double check things before I know for sure. But the top 64, the day 2, everybody who makes it in to the main event, or the day 1 rather. I call it day 2 because the qualifiers I count as a day, but technically it's main event day 1. I'll get to cast that. However, it'll be a little bit odd for me because I gotta do it in the flesh. That is not necessarily something I've done. I've not face revealed. I've always been my character self, so that'll be a first for myself. Not a first ever, but first as silent, if that makes any sense. Without further ado, though, I'm not going to be waiting too much longer to get ourselves into the swing of things here. Take a look at the Illuvalytics website and see what kind of matches are going on. Like, the first Pro League Sit and Go for the IPL 500, it was actually pretty insane. I will pull this up here. Again, not going to necessarily speculate as to who got in, but we can make, I guess, educated guesses for ourselves here. Or not educated guesses, but you'll see. At least what the results look like. Where they go from here, I'm not 100% sure, but we will get there. Let me throw it on over here for a second. Yeah, so the first thing that was absolutely crazy, 340 people here in the first sit and go, which is absolutely exciting to see. I know personally, looking at the website while matches were happening, and I even played I know I'm a sucker for punishment, but I played a couple of ranked games for fun during these sit and go. One, just so my name was on the board, but two, I wanted to see like who was all playing. And in a lot of my lobbies, there were a ton, like 3/4 of the lobby were all new people. And that was very, very exciting to see. 340 people playing was absolutely awesome to see. Of course, the results of it, again, not 100% sure who moves on in what regard, but you can take a look. Can we just give the fact that Texan almost had a perfect run here? 5 wins and 1 second. That is an absolute godlike run there, so props to them. And this is the second time in a row I think I've seen I always have a hard time saying this name, but Kinho Sura have a solid run as well. And they only got the 5 games in compared to the 6. Detective Alan A, I mean, we've seen them do very, very well in Dreamers Esports events, doing well here as well. Mind Ya Hype, Soda Hype, Yami Yugi, Kalex is back up there. Biofunction, that's a new one to me. Carl from Team Phantom, Narkish, seen them around a little bit here and there. Good to see them up in the top 10. Darth 3 Hype, Oris Phantom, Fancy Pants, a player who I'm pretty certain is actually rather new to Illuvium. I could be wrong, but seen them for the first time in a Dreamers Esports tournament not too long ago. I think it was last week. And good seeing them make it into the top 16. And then GM Phoenix, Ole Deshow, 2 players I've seen quite often. Moonpie is somebody new to me. And then that rounds up, in theory, the top 16, which in theory, again, top 16 are the ones who move on. However, there's a few other factors that could very well change that. That I'm not 100% sure of. Like, IPL rankings from the past IPL 250 that happened last weekend. There are a certain amount of people who get to move on from that. There's also, I believe, 8 players that make it off of the leaderboard as well. So even though it's just the top 16, it could very well go a little bit further, but I don't want to completely speculate as to who made it or not and get anybody's hopes up on accident. So I'll leave it at that for now. Let's see, what kind of live matches do we have going on here? I'm very, very torn. Part of me wants to follow people that I've already known, but at the same time, I kind of want to see a lobby full of new people that I don't really know at all. I don't know. Here's a segment called Ask the Wifey. Hun, what do you think? New people or people I already know? New people? Alright, there we go. Okay, so we're gonna look for some newer people in just a second. One has started quite a bit ago. Let's see if I can hop into this here. I'm okay joining a match even if it's gone over like 10 minutes or so, because the early rounds usually aren't too heavily impactful, at least to me anyway. I'd rather cast from the halfway point onwards. Kill the music here as we get ready for our first match. My computer tries not to spaz as we're loading up the game here. And perfect. This game has nobody below 50 as of this moment, so we'll get into that in just a moment's time. You can hear it, I'm just waiting for it to show up in OBS here. Weird that it's taken so long. It was just working a second ago. Classic streamer scuff coming in clutch here. Is it actually not going to even let me now? I don't know where else. Oh, there we go. All right, perfect. Was worried there for a second. But a good time to hop on in here. So we are just getting through, I believe this is the second carousel round. We do see a couple of tier 4s here. But in this lobby, as we can see, I guess one of the way that you can tell that somebody is rather new to Illuvium, it's not a guarantee, don't get me wrong, but if they don't have a profile picture, there is a good chance that they are brand new. But again, not a guarantee. Because again, in this lobby, the only person that I recognize is actually leading the lobby here, and that of course is Conquer up there in first place. Cat Insanity, Nairam, Miro Many, Willen25, Itsuki, Tensao, and Sukta in this lobby here. Gonna ride along here with two of our newcomers to start off with this one, as we do see Nairam and Sukta getting ready to go into this one. Bulwarks and Empaths for the side of Nairam. Meanwhile, on the other side, I'll tell you what, Sukta has quite the established little team here. 5 fighters, 2 Templars with the Wildfire on top of it. That is pretty nasty. And you can see right off the rip here, it's already plowed through one of the tanks here from the side of Nairam. Has that Boomerang Ranger point blank at the front lines, but did not matter. Look at this team absolutely tear through. That was kind of scary. Beautifully done there from Sukta. Took an early beating, but it looks like they leveled up to 8 rather quickly and got themselves into a good position. I want to take a look here at one of or two of our players, maybe on a little bit on the lower side here. Willen in the green, while we have Tensao down at the bottom. Let's see, what are they running? Mixture of rogues and bulwarks. A little bit of empath as well to get that little extra shield. Not too much, but it can help you sustain ever so slightly here. Meanwhile, on the side of Willen, empath fighter bulwark, a little bit of a mixture. Not necessarily hard committing to any one thing per se, closest to Earth, but we'll have to see lots of items onto that Archos here for Tensao to just try and hold the line. But look at this, an odd choice here from Willen. Throws all of the items onto their Greater Doka, but they actually do have the Forest right into the middle as well. I'm sure it would have absolutely loved to have that Ion Shroud this time, but it is going to end up throwing all the eggs onto that Doka. It is holding its own, all things considered, but everything around it seems to be falling, and Tensao should be able to clean this up quite nicely. And sure enough, that will be the case. The Ranger will last to fall, and there it goes. I know for a lot of new players, of course, learning tiers of units takes a long time. Just like if I was to hop into Teamfight Tactics, for example, I would have to take a long time. Or Dota, Underlords, Auto Chess, whatever you want to call it. It takes a long time to learn the units. And then, of course, Illuvium has that little extra factor, which is the Ranger itself. You won't see that in any other game here. Your Swiss Army knife of sorts on the board. being able to turn it into whatever you want for the most part. But as we go through this NPC round 17, taking a look very quickly at the leader of this lobby, Conquer did end up falling, so with Cad Sanity versus Conquer, actually. Let's take a look at our top two, why don't we? Sitting there at 77, Conquer at 69, hanging on. And the one thing I also did want to mention, because it didn't necessarily come into play because we joined a little bit late, but these players did start at a higher level compared to normal, because of the Sanctum Mesa region. But again, let's take a look at what we got here. Air Shock Dust on the side of Conquer. Scions, Enchanters, and Empaths with the Rhoda for a little bit of extra pressure. Meanwhile, on the other side, we do see 6 air fully loaded up here for Cad Sanity alongside the Inferno and Dust as well. And we do see lots of augments on to that Arctase. Gonna be looking to be an absolute menace as long as it can keep itself alive, because unfortunately Arctase, just at least for me, tends to always fall into the middle of the enemies and just end up dying with some decent damage coming on down. The shock though is going to immediately get rid of the ranger, so there goes one pretty significant portion of damage. The shock is just doing such a number here onto the Arctase. It may not even necessarily be focused, but it ends up dying anyway. And with the Mammoth to be the last one alive, Conquer is going to reclaim the throne here for first place here in the lobby. And just like that, you blink and it's over. But we do have our first player into the hot seat, as we would call it. Who are they going up against? Meromeni. Meromeni we haven't had the opportunity to ride along with yet, so let's take a look what they got. They do have that fully loaded, or fully evolved rather, Cardilox, which also has the Retribution's Call for a little extra thorns and 1,000 extra max health. Absolutely love to see that on the Cardilox. Meanwhile, that Exalted Gorilla loaded up with damage augments as well, and that thing is going to be an absolute menace. The 2 bulwarks, 2 fighters, 2 rogues. It's a very, very balanced composition in that regard. However, Earth, Granite, Mud with a little toxic and water on top of it, it's going to be scary here for our one player in the red, Willen25. As we see immediately the damage jumps right onto the Riptor, but I did not realize that Exalted Gorilla as well had the Rogue Augment with a little bit of HP sustain as well. That is going to be very, very tough to have to bust through. Dove right on in, immediately took out the Riptor. That foe is still alive, but with even more augments since the last time I've checked, that Cardilox is just not dying. Slowly but surely these fighters just go from target to target, claim them out with the help of that Exalted Gorilla. And unfortunately here for Willen, that should be our first elimination here in this lobby. Granted, Nairom and Tensao are right there as well. Sokata right there in as well at 20. So a bad loss for any of these players could very well knock them out, but if it's a close loss, they might be a-okay. Let's see, Nairom versus Sokta, so 2 of our players down near the bottom. Again, for the side of Sokta, it's going to be those fighters, Templars, and Rogues. On the other end, we have Bulwarks, Empaths, with a little bit of Revenant as well. That fully loaded Blotto here for the side of Sokta is going to be rather tough to crack, especially if the blind's getting implemented on top. Forrest in the corner is going to be able to out-sustain the 2 rogues. Rogue's going to have to jump on back with the wildfire now triggering here to keep that Blotto alive even more. It is just not going to be enough here for Nairom, as they are going to barely hang on by 1 HP. I was going to say that was a pretty tough loss, but thankfully they took out just enough to be able to hang in here for 1 more round. Try one more time as they go up against our lobby leader. Nairom versus Conquer. And of course, I always love to see the hollows, and in this instance here, the dark hollows coming out here from Conquer. Very, very awesome find. Do have a bunch of items here onto this Octius. This thing is going to be a menace, and then the Kukurov as well. Building it like a tank, so it is going to be tough to crack. What about damage for the side of Nyrom? It's a lot of eggs into the one basket of the Fernite in the back. We'll have to see if they can just open fire and get the job done, but I'm seeing a lot of red health bars dropping immediately. A lot of it has to do with the shock, with that Octius, and with your damage dealers immediately being jumped on. It looks like Nyrom will be the first one eliminated here in this lobby. Sure enough, there it goes. 6 there for shock with the fire, tempest, and dust on top of it. Conquer has a very, very strong composition as of this moment. And my apologies, second one eliminated here from this lobby. So we hop in once again to the carousel. A handful of tier 5s. They all happen to be the Alfie line, with the exception of the deer and the rampies. I keep forgetting that the deer is actually a tier 5. But lots of Alfies on board here. Sukta gonna pick one up. Conquer gonna pick up the deer. Cat Sanity gonna pick up one of these Alfies as well, looks like. And Marrow gets the Atlas. So taking a look at our health once again. Conquer leading the charge with 69. Cat Sanity 66. 66. Itsuki 44. And Sound 19. Marrow Many 9. Sukta with 1. And it looks like the camera glitched on me, so I've actually got to reboot this. We will load right back into it, I promise you. Thankfully, it is just an NPC round after that carousel, so we'll be a-okay. Get back in before the next PvP round. Not miss a thing unless somebody were to get taken out by the NPCs, which I don't think I've ever seen happen. There we go, we're back. So we have 3 potential players in the hot seat. 10 South, 19. Would need a bad loss, but it is possible. Then Marrow, Many, and Sukta, let's see. Do they happen to play each other? Yes, they do. So somebody's getting knocked out one way or another in this one. Marrow Many again going to have the Bulwark Fighter Rogue mixture, more so focused on the Mud, Earth, and Granite affinities. Meanwhile, for Sukta trying to hang on as well, has Magma, Bloom, Wildfire. They've got a ton of affinities as well, mixed in with the Fighters and Templars. For the classes that they've chosen and committed a little bit harder, but again, lots and lots of eggs here onto that Fernite and the Blotto to try to hold the line with the Singed. But damage-wise, watch out for that Exalted Gorilla, and the Rogue immediately jumps right onto the Fernite. So many augments immediately off the table before Sukta really even has a chance to breathe. Very, very scary moments here for Sukta, but the rest of the team trying their best to get on through here. Polar Bear and the Forest actually being able to fight their way through. They may have lost their Fernite, but it does not mean they lose a round. Can the Sephoris hang on and pull this with the Ranger in the middle? The Magma from the side of Sukta is slowly but surely chipping away. 1-on-2 here. The Ranger will end up falling. It's going to be the Sephoris versus the Forest, and we'll have to see big damage coming down, but it hangs on. It does have the Bloom to keep it in the game a little bit longer, and no, the Forest is not going to be able to do it. A very, very close battle right down to the final Alluvials. But not enough time here for Sukta, and then 10 Sal does go down as well. So Conquer versus Marrow Many now. An incredible save there for Meromeni in that last one, but of course now going up against the lobby leader. This one going to be terrifying. The 6 Air Force Shock coming out here once again for Conquer. That Octius is going to be in the front lines, but it's going to be completely safe for the most part. Is it within taunt range? It is, so that Shock is going to be delayed. It does end up finally going down. They're going to be able to finally take down one, and I think that Conquer should be able to snowball off of that. Without question, they will be. A valiant attempt here for Meromeni, but they will end up falling with a 4th place finish. Not too bad, not too shabby. But what about Cat Sanity and Itsuki as we are here in our top 3? Our podium has been set. Let's see who's actually playing each other. It is going to be Conquer and Itsuki. Itsuki here with a lot of fire. 5 fire, 4 air, the 2 Inferno, 2 dust. With a couple of Revenants. Not enough to get that extra empowered attack bonus with the attack speed reduction, but still quite a few. Enchanters are here, Empaths are here. I mean, they've got a lot to work with. But again, the burst damage coming out of Conquer isn't going to be too much to handle as this entire team's going to dive on in. We do see the ramp fight loaded up with augments ready to rock, including the Void Cleaver to spread their damage. We'll have to see how that goes. It's an awkward spot here, actually, for the ramp fight. It's not really getting itself into a good position. That Mammoth actually kind of throws it into the middle of the team. Can this be the clutch ult coming on through? It is going to be able to pull it off. Big damage coming on through, but it is not going to be able to clean up the battle. Itsuki will end up falling, but do they get eliminated? Not even close. They still have 10 left. Itsuki's going to be going up against the ghost of the same player, I believe, that they just went up against. No, it's going to be going up against Cut Sanity, rather. Personally, I love always watching the player versus player combat, not necessarily the ghost. But considering this is the only battle that is in hot seat territory, I do kind of want to see how it ends up going on here, if Itsuki can hang on. So let's flip the lid one more time and see if this actually works. Very, very curious if they can hang on here. They got that fully loaded Monarch, which is actually pretty sick. And they turned that Monarch into a Revenant, too. A good job to be able to immediately take care of the Octius. And of course, when you're going up against the Ghost is not necessarily lined up to play against you in particular. And Itsuki is going to be able to capitalize on that and keep themselves alive. Hop on over to Conquer vs. Cad Sanity. Let's see if we can catch how that one turned out, and it went into the favor of Cad Sanity. Alright. An interesting situation where all 3 players can at least defeat one person in the top 3, but not both. Oh, we have the opportunity here with this NPC round. Take a look at some of the team compositions coming out from the players that did end up falling. Of course, the heavy earth and granite style coming out here for Meromeni does get them into 4th. Not too shabby. Bulwark Vanguard with water, earth, and granite was on the docket here for 10th South. Couldn't quite get it done, though. They had that fully loaded slashing as well. Definitely heartbreaker that didn't get more value out of that there. Fighters and Templars with the Wildfire from Sokta was scary, but unfortunately does fall short as well. And then due to the bug there, we do not get to see Nyram and Willen, but that is a-okay. We clean things up here. So like I was saying before, everybody seems to be able to beat each other one way or another. Itsuki can beat Cad Sanity, but hasn't beaten Conquer. But we do see Cad Sanity versus Itsuki right here now. But is this going to change anything now that Cad Sanity can actually position for Itsuki's team in particular? A little bit of extra cover here on this Octius. We do see the fully loaded ramp fights on both sides. That's going to be fun to cast, considering they're probably both going to jump at the same time. little bit of extra items here onto the Matu as well, trying to keep that front line as safe as possible. But we have 2, maybe 3 Alluvials here ready to dive in directly into the middle, and since there's a mixture of rogues on the other side, they are going to be able to breach it. Here comes the Monarch with the carpet bomb across pretty much the entire field. High value there for that Monarch. Where are the ramp fights? Here they come, but at the same time, and so far I am seeing a lot of green, but at the same time the Arctis on the other side is hanging on, getting some good shots in, but unfortunately there's just too many Alluvials here for Itsuki to be able to plow on through. It is going to be Conquer and Catsanity as your last players alive now. Solid run there for Itsuki nonetheless. Looked over to my OBS and it said offline for a second, so I got a little bit nervous, but no, just a bug. We're good. Alright, unfortunately here we did also get a little bit of a spectator bug, so you'll see the 2 Alluvials on the field with the items. Please disregard them. They will not be targeted. They will not be taken down. They have no say. Now, Catsanity, I think, what are they trying to do here? I was going to say, the way that they were playing almost looked like they had a crate to open to try and get a specific affinity. But there was nothing available, so taking everybody down in a very, very spread out approach. Of course, that Octius is going to be one of the core targets they're going to be diving on in for. The Matu is directly point blank with it, actually. Already doing some damage, but because they're doing damage to it, that shock is going to come on down a little bit quicker. And a lot of red bars are coming on down. Here comes the ramp fight. It's going to be able to take care of 1 or 2 Alluvials, but they have actually lost Octius. No, the Octius just got thrown, so it's still in this one. It's all down to the Matu to try and somehow 1v5 this, and I don't think that's going to go in their favor at all. Catsanity now with 2 health to get the job done versus Conquer. How do they position themselves for this one? Very scary position, of course, for Catsanity. That Octius being up in the front line, normally you wouldn't want to do that, but of course there's a bunch of rogues on the other side, so it's actually the smart thing to do. But Catsanity is playing it smart at the same time, because that Matu is directly in its face. It's not going to jump to the back line. We're going to see once again here for Catsanity spreading out the Alluvials in a pretty wide line of scrimmage here. They have their own Octius, but it does not have any augments onto it this time. The Rota, or the Revo rather, on the side of Conquer is immediately starting to pepper down this Octius on the red side, and it's going to take it down very, very quickly. The ramp fight as well is doing a solid job here for the side of Catsanity, but it is not going to be enough. Monarch trying to get something done, but there's just too much here for the side of Conquer. They will take this lobby and score themselves a win and get some fantastic points to go towards that leaderboard here today. So beautifully done there from Conquer to take that one. Good to see Catsanity do well as well. And good to see a lobby with a bunch of players that I'm not necessarily too familiar with, but well played nonetheless to all. Let's see what we've got up next. We have a couple of lobbies here that are just like lobbies of death. I kind of want to snag one. No break. Let's just hop on into the next one. Oh gosh, and it's the region that gives you legendary augments as well, so that is kind of scary. Hopping in here at round 11, we do have, as we go through the health bars to see where everybody's at so far, we have PLG Monarch, Anubis Syndicate, Psycho Hype, TGG Slayer, Axel, Willen. Hey, Willen, welcome back. Squawk from Team Monarch and Vipanta to round out our lobby as we see Anubis and PLG, two players that I think the Illuvium community are rather familiar with. And a very, very even battle, to say the least here. 3-on-2 to try and finish this one up. But a couple of health bars on the right-hand side. Can this Greater Gorilla clean this up with the Chikoro? Yes, they will be able to. And with that, that's going to put PLG just barely ahead of Anubis as we go into our second NPC round. Of course, I was mentioning before, the Shard Bluff region this time by is going to give a absolute ridiculous amount of legendary augments. 3 legendary augments at the very, very ending rounds, to say the least. Because if you make it to round 25, you're probably in the top 3 at that point. And that can be chaotic if we do end up getting there. Or whenever we do end up getting there. Okay, so let's see here. We were just with PLG. Let's take a look at Axel, a player that's not seen too often here. Vipanta, I'm not too familiar with as well. So let's take a look at this battle here. Vipanta immediately going for heavy, heavy fire with rogues and bulwarks. Meanwhile, on the other side, a little bit of a safe mixture here for Axel. 4 fighters, 2 rogues, and a bulwark. So this one is probably going to end quickly, given the nature. We do see, is that a stage 3? That is a stage 3 Arcane Ember Lynx. I know the Arcane Lynx has been something I've been favoring personally over the last couple of days. They just hit like an absolute truck. But look at this little polar bear. It's got some decent items on top of it as well, and the dash. Everybody's playing with some very, very like low stage alluvials, but we're seeing Axel just be able to absolutely shred through this one. Beautifully done. I know personally that's something I've had to learn as well, getting into Illuvium. It's like, sure, you might be able to hard focus one affinity, you might be able to go pretty high on it, might be able to go pretty high on your classes as well, but that doesn't necessarily translate to power in your battle. At least not early. You still need the individual alluvials to be strong as well. There's been many, many times I know personally I've gone for 5 bulwarks extremely quickly, for example. And if they're all stage 1 still, sure, then they might be designed to be tanks, but if they're still stage 1, you're going to melt through them still very quickly. TGG going up against PLG, but why don't we say hi to Squawk, who's going up against Vipanta once again. I'm just curious as to what Squawk is doing, and I mean, this is something that we're probably going to end up seeing quite a bit throughout this tournament. It's not necessarily as prominent as it was maybe a patch or 2 ago, but you'll probably hear a lot of Rogue Revenant because it's a style that a lot of players have gotten used to, because it was extremely overpowered maybe a patch or 2 ago. It's still extremely strong, and a lot of people are still very well rehearsed and well practiced with this style, especially if you can get those items onto the Penguin. As we see here, the Stabbin completely loaded up with items. So I imagine that will be a style of play that we're going to see pretty consistently throughout the weekend. I do see Willen's got -99, so they must have tapped out here. in this one. It's definitely hard, just like any auto battler. As soon as you first hop into it, it's going to take you a long time to get the swing of things. And as much as the IPL is extremely exciting, it is still an extremely high pressure scenario for this to be possibly your first introduction to it. But again, this is all just assumptions. Let's see, who haven't we seen? We've seen Psycho yet? Psycho versus PLG. We're hopping into a draft, apparently. Oh. This is a different bug. Let's see if it lets me in. Otherwise, we'll just have to back out in just a second here. Yeah, we're gonna have to back out, it looks like. I was gonna say, the draft was over. That's okay, though. Pop right back into it. Still early enough into the game as well, it's not a problem. And here we're with Psycho and PLG. Lots of Scions on the side of Psycho. That Cardlock's trying its best to be able to hold the line here, protect the two Scions left into the background. And it looks like it's going to be able to get the job done nicely here. The Sephiroth on the one side is still raining down. But is it going to be enough? I don't think they have enough to be able to punch through this Cardlock. So sure enough, Psycho Hype is going to take that one. Anubis versus PLG. Interesting. What is going on with Axel? Axel versus TGG. Both these players in the 60s in regards to their health levels. 4 Scions here for the side of TGG. Meanwhile, Fire Templar for Axel. See how this goes. Look for that Lure. It is itemed up and ready to go, going directly towards that polar bear, which is looking like probably to carry the squad. Big charm, big chop coming out here from the Lure, and it is going to be able to take care of that polar bear. There is still one loaded up alluvial here for the side of Axel up on the top side, and it is going to be able to come on through. And sure enough, that dash from earlier has been leveled up to the rake, and it's going to be able to clean up with a big Omega and help with the rest of the squad clean up, even though they took a little bit of a beating earlier in that round. Back over to the NPC round. Here we go. Right along with our leader for this one currently. Playing with the Mystics as well. With heavy earth, earth and granite. But again, PLG going to be there with 87. Nubis right behind them with 86. Rogue Revenant. Axel in third as of this moment with the Fighter Templars. Squawk there with Rogue Revenant. Psycho Hype is going to be bringing the Scion Bulwarks here with, again, a pretty heavy emphasis onto earth and granite. TGG has the Bloom alongside some Empaths, Bulwarks, and Scions. And Pipanta, full blast on fire with Inferno as well. I am very, very curious as to how that is going to go here versus the earth and granite style here of PLG. Pipanta not necessarily reliant on one unit in particular, it looks like, but very, very reliant on one affinity, which is going to make things a little bit messy, considering PLG does, I believe, have the hyper advantage against them, as we see those yellow arrows next to all of the alluvials. This means that they're going to be attacking faster, and I believe doing more damage and getting their Omega abilities faster because of that type advantage. They also do have that foe completely loaded up with items as well. Meanwhile, again, Pipanta's is rather spread out, so we'll have to see, can they beat the type advantage and still get into here? They have a couple of decently leveled alluvials now, especially that Tiru that is completely leveled to stage 3. The back line, though, including the Lynx, is getting shredded, but the Singe is in the background, able to clean up at least the initial attack. The rest, though, in the background, Sephoris is going to end up falling. So this is a 2-on-1, the Ranger versus the Singed and the Cub. But the Cub's not going to be able to put that much damage, and then the type advantage is not in the favor of the Singe. Spin the win, can you do it? Good shields again coming out, and the fact that this Ranger is going to be able to keep shielding every time it Omegas has me thinking that they're going to be able to take this one nice and cleanly. A very well fought battle there, but that Ranger was too tanky to deal with, especially with the hyper buff type disadvantage. So with that, Bipanta here is now in the hot seat. A bad loss could absolutely take them down in this game, and they're going up against Squawk, who looks like they're going to try and blow this thing up very, very quickly. Fully loaded Stabin, as well as the Rake and the Verminio. A very, very scary squad, especially since they are lined up to dive directly towards those Scions there on the side of Bipanta. Not let that Lynx get a single shot off. Much as I love the Lynx, that first initial shot is critical, and we see 5, 6 Illuvials immediately diving on in towards it. Does the Lynx even get the opportunity to get the shot off? It's about there. No, it does go down before it even gets a chance to shoot. And this is kind of heartbreaking. The Rampy is going to pop up. It is going to be able to do some damage to 2, but nowhere near enough to clean this one up. Squawk is going to eliminate Bipanta here. No, not quite actually. That was not heavy of enough loss. So Bipanta proved me wrong and hanging in there. I saw the drone die. I thought they were eliminated, but nope. Based off of this, they're still in the game, which means they have one more shot, and the luck is definitely not in Bipanta's favor here, going up against yet another lobby leader with Anubis from Team Syndicate. And sure enough, it's going to be Rogue Revenant once again. And of course, Rogues, like I emphasize this so heavily, it's because they have the crit chance, right? And they essentially have 40% crit on their stuff, on their attacks, and then every time they essentially crit, lets the Revenants do shielding and extra attack damage. So yeah, they tend to blow things up extremely quickly with that combination, as we're going to see the Lynx not... Oh, it does get to get one attack off this time, and some decent damage coming out here from what I believe was a ramp feed, but it is not going to go into Bipanta's favor. Immediately evaporated, unfortunately. Granted, a couple of Anubis' Illuvials did fall as well, but at the end of the day, Anubis is the last one standing here in that battle, and Bipanta's going to fall out of here in 7th. I mean, I respect it, hard committed towards the fire style, and as much as I do like it, just unfortunately, not enough sustain, not enough tank to really keep them in the game here. So they will end up falling, especially with such a rogue-heavy lobby. Very scary to deal with. One thing that's also very scary here for TGG Slayer, as they are in the hot seat. If they lose, I do believe that this will be an elimination. We do see, of course, their Malura did work earlier. Now it has evolved into the Malura. Still loaded up with items as well. Do they have the Bloom buff? Yes, they do. So, the Malura not only tanky, but going to be tough to deal with. They also have the Arctics completely loaded up on augments as well. But watch out for this Polar Bear. Watch out for the Rake diving directly into the back line. And they actually focus down the Archos. The healing for the back line is going to be taken down. Look for that Malura in the back line of Axel, though, trying to do some work. But everybody else on the red side is just getting evaporated. One more untargetable to maybe turn this thing around. All the eyes are off the Arctace. Can they pull this one off? Malura hangs on. They actually got the elimination. Can they get the Riley? They absolutely will be able to. What a save. Coming out here from the red side. Beautifully done there from TGG Slayer to hang on by a thread. I thought they were cooked. I mean, that Malura did exactly what it needed to do. It jumped into the back line, immediately taking down, or not immediately taking down, but at least distracting two of the backline members there of Axel. And then luckily there, and thankfully calculated there for the Arctis. A lot of times that carpet bomb ends up just kind of getting you to fly yourself to your death, but actually got it out of dodge. And then the untargetable on top of that, being able to put the focus back onto the Malura that was already in the midst of its charm. Beautifully timed. Keeping themselves in the game as we go to another NPC round. Let's take a look at what our leader is running once again. It's no surprise here, Rogue Revenant here for Anubis. Squawk also Rogue Revenant. Meanwhile, Axel in third with 54 health, going for the Fighter Templars. PLG Monarch for heavy Earth and Granite. Mixture of rogues, mystics, and empaths. Then Psycho Hype, heavy Scion with the 5 Borgs as well. Got the firepower in the back line and a heavy front line. We'll have to see if they can pull that one off as we go on. And then, of course, we were just right along not too long ago, TGG Slayer with a composition that's a little heavy on Scions. You got the 4 of them. But then a lot of tank is just really left up to the Malura to try and do. Very scary way to play, but I mean, they're hanging in there so far. As we watch Anubis clean house here and taking just a quick look at this background. I don't see this one too often, so when I have the opportunity, I have to look around. But TGG, who are you going up against? PLG Monarch. So we were curious a little bit about what this Earth Granite squad is up to. Well, we'll get the opportunity to see. Where do they have their items? It's pretty well spread out, with the exception, again, of this foe that is completely loaded up. Meanwhile, TGG Slayer, again, fully loaded up with this Malura, fully loaded up on the Arctis. Nobody on the bench, too, so they blew whatever credits they had to try and get one final push. But it looks like a lot of their stuff was contested, but they do actually get ramp fight. And it's got a good target directly in the middle. Who's going to take it, though? The Malura or the ramp fight? We'll have to see in just a second. It's going to be diving right on in. They both managed to get on through. And this ramp fight ult B, the clutch moment here, goes to the skies, looks for the drop down, does manage to go right on top of the Sephoris. The foe is knocked into untargetable, trying to get the job done with that Ranger. Takes care of it, but it's still stuck on the Malura. The Arctis dives right back in, dives to its death, but the untargetable once again, and the ramp fight once again. A very heavily extended fight with, again, it's completely reliant on the Arctis and Malura, but the Arctis got destroyed before it had the chance to fly away. All up to the Malura, which, to be fair, still packs a very heavy punch, but you gotta deal with the Adordo. The little deer on the right-hand side is gonna be healing up the green side that entire time, and that very well might have been the difference maker. Had the healer not been there, they might have been able to hang on, but because it was, they will end up falling. TGG Slayer dropping in 6th place here in this round. We did just see ELG, I believe. Anubis for Psycho. Okay, let's go for it. Rogue Revenant versus Heavy Scion, going directly into that bunker. And of course, the one thing that can kind of catch a lot of people off guard is this Matu, the Mammoth. It may seem like it's an upfront fighter with it being a tank, but it can actually fight from there. It does have some range. So it's doing its best to try and protect all the Scions. The water cannon coming out here from the Alfie, but with that ramp fight ult, it is going to dive right onto 2 of the tanks, taking a lot of them down. The Mammoth is going to fall. The Axodon's going to fall, leaving these Scions wide open. They're going to try their damnedest, but here comes the ramp fight once again. Chunks them down the half. There goes the Ranger. Is the untargetable there? It is there. Can they get one more shot off? Does manage to get one off. It's going to take care of 2, but you could not deal with the Ranger and the Penguin, so that's going to be the loss there for Psycho, as they are now knocked into the bubble once again, up against PLG Monarch. And they held their own pretty decently, but it just came up a little bit short. Can they pull this one off with maybe a little bit, or versus a team composition that's a little bit less heavy on the rogues? But granted, it does of course have the Mystic buff, where it will gain damage, amp and damage reduction once they fall to half. So they kinda need to do a little bit of burst damage. I hope this doesn't really go long in theory, but we'll have to see how this one goes. The Adordo in the backline with the Sephoris is going to keep things nice and healthy for the most part for the green side, as long as they don't get bursted immediately. And they almost did. The heal from the Adordo comes out in just the last possible second. The Forest rather, in the back, or in the front of this red squad, doing a ton of damage, but they finally do manage to take care of the Adordo. Psycho Hype is going to be able to get that, and here comes a water cannon once again, now onto the Sephoris, and we're seeing the green health bars dwindling. It is a 7-on-3, now 7-on-1, and the Forest is not going to be able to clutch that one up. A big win here for Psycho Hype, as it's now PLG in the worst case scenario down at the bottom of the lobby, going up against Anubis. Anubis versus PLG, and we do also have Psycho versus Squawk. So these are two very, very tough battles to say the least. I think I'm going to ride with PLG versus Anubis. Anubis in the green. And I tell you what, especially now that they have that Omnisaur Surge, the longer this fight goes, as if Ramp Fight wasn't a problem enough, it's going to be continuing to be an absolute menace. They have to blow this thing up and blow it up pretty quickly as they dive directly onto the bunker once again. In a fantastic position here for this Ramp Fight as well. Takes to the skies. It's going to be able to get its ult off, and that did a ton of damage. I don't think there is any way that Monarch really hangs on here, but at the same time, I could be absolutely wrong. They've been able to turn it around. They make me eat my words. The Forest is still rather healthy, and they had the Adordo, they had the Sephoris. The three of them are together going to be able to hang on. And Psycho Hype did get eliminated here, so PLG finds themselves in a worst case scenario of being able to at least get fourth, which is still respectable, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of faith, I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of faith in that Ramp Fight to just blow up the backline immediately, but it was not strong enough to go through that bunker. Caught me off guard, did a great job. So again now, Rogue Revenant here for Squawk, who leads the lobby. Rogue Revenant here as well for Anubis. Axel, fighter in the 4 Berserkers as well. That is pretty crazy, having that extra ability now where right before they do end up falling, they become unkillable and get double their attack speed. That is pretty ridiculous. And then the heavy, heavy earth and granite once again here with the extra bloom. Balanced composition here from PLG. So of course, most people are going to see that there's 2 Rogue Revenants at the top and roll their eyes a little bit, but there is still potential for something extremely interesting if PLG or Axel can pull this one off. We'll let the Rogues fight amongst themselves. We're going to see Axel and PLG from Team Monarch are going to be able to pull off here in this one. Again, 6 fighters, Berserkers. You have the Arcane Conduit now onto your Rip Lance as well. So not only is this thing a brawler, but that Sting is going to do so much more damage. Fully loaded Blazonite as well. Got a Forest as well. Lots of threats here on the side of Axel. Meanwhile, Monarch, again, it is easy to count this team out, but we'll have to see, keeping an eye on the Forest on the red side as the rest of these Alluvials from Axel dive on through. That's a pretty tanky Goliath, but it still feels like it's being chewed through rather quickly. Now that the Rip Lance has the opportunity to go free, it could be problematic. The Rake here for Axel is also just taking care of everybody on the side of PLG. It's just a matter of dealing with the Forest, and that will be done. PLG will end up falling. a valiant effort, but PLG will end up falling in 4th place. Off to the draft one more time here. Which round are we on? Because, of course, again, the region could very well come into play if everybody ends up getting 3 random legendary augments. Once they get to round 25, we might have very well passed it already. I always lose track of which round we're on specifically. And sure enough, we're way past round 25, but that's probably why we see so many of these legendary augments on top of everybody. Anubis is going up against the Ghost of Axel. We'll have to see if this heavy rogue revenant style again. 9 rogues, that is absolutely ridiculous. Coming out here from Anubis. But I personally do want to see the PvP round here, because I feel like if there's anybody that can take down Squawk in this instance, it is probably Axel, who's actually leveled up that polar bear up to the Jotun. So it is a tanky monster in this one alongside the rest of the squad. There are a lot of threats, but when there's so many legendary augments on the board, you can never be sure. The rogues on the green side dive on through. Rampite to the skies is going to be able to do some decent damage. I was on the green side, however, but here comes the Jotun as well. Can the Sign of Axel hang on by a thread? That Jotun's still alive, but they have to deal with the Penguin. They're not going to be able to deal with the Penguin. And actually, that is it. That was the final round here for this one, as Squawk is going to be the last one standing. Anubis could not take care of Axel's ghost. So, Anubis will fall in 3rd, Axel will fall in 2nd, and that will be the round. Now, of course, there is still about another hour or 2 of this qualifier going on. But personally, I think I'm probably just going to do one more here. Give myself a little bit of an earlier night, because I get to do more casting for everybody tomorrow on the Illuvium stream, so I'm extremely excited for that. And want to make sure I'm good to go for all of you tomorrow. Quickly getting situated here, see if we can find a lobby that's made it past the initial early stage. Okay, I've got one. One player, at least personally, from watching so many tournaments and so much action here, that at one person that I feel like is probably due for a little bit of luck is Winnie Monarch. I want to see them do well. And I see them in the finals of so many tournaments, especially the Dreamers esports ones. But they can barely, just not quite crack it when it comes to the finals. I want to see how they do in their game in just a moment's time. Quickly rebooting the game, because, at least personally, after every 2 games, the 3rd game always crashes for me. So I always reboot the game after game number 2. Getting that situated right now. And again, hope everybody's been having a fantastic day. Of course, this has just been an absolute fantastic day for Illuvium as well. The player numbers has been crazy to see. The fact that 340 players played in the first Sit and Go. I'm curious as to where we are now for Sit and Go number 2. While I load this in here, maybe I can take a look. Time slot 2. Will you show me? Might be a little too early to tell. No, it's at 149 already, and we're about halfway through, so that's pretty crazy still. I know a lot of players have been having a little bit of a hard time in terms of, I guess, the format as well. Some I see a lot of discussion in the Discord in regards to like advantages being given over to the people on the ranked leaderboards, or that the format is too hard. But that's the thing about the competition. Unfortunately, it's meant to be hard, right? It's not like nothing's really unfair here, but it is supposed to be tough. There's a reason why not every hockey player can go into the NHL, right? And it's a very, very tough tournament to get into. You make it into that top 64, you're absolutely one of the best here in the Illuvium Arena. And it's not meant to be a shot at anybody in the slightest. But the competition is fierce. But it's been cool to see some of our long-term players making it in on whether it be leaderboard or making it in pretty quickly through the play-ins or the sit-and-goes, but also seeing some new players come on in and just absolutely crush right off the rip as well. As we hop on into this one right at the 10th round. Have a couple of players that I recognize. Of course, Winnie Monarch was the one that I mentioned earlier. Formegox is someone I am not familiar with, but good to see them doing well in this lobby so far. Nyx Hype, a Hype member that I don't think I've seen before, but good to see them there. OLASHers, Atomo, Jasima, and Dimitri Syndicate, someone I've seen around ranked quite a long time. And the Muffin Man. Oh dear God, who kills the Muffin Man? We'll have to see. Or does the Muffin Man get the revenge arc and kill everybody instead? We'll have to see. In fact, let's take a look right now. What is Muffin Man doing? It looks like Dimitri Syndicate's going up against the Muffin Man, as we do have Bulwark's Aegis Empath here for Muffin Man. Meanwhile, on the other side, 5 Empath and the 2 Bulwarks here for Dimitri Syndicate. In terms of augments, that Fleesh is completely loaded up. We'll have to see if that has any effect at all, as we'd see on the other side. Again, I couldn't have played this better if I tried. Of course, I'm always cursing out the Fleesh for being underwhelming, and both of these players are relying pretty heavily on the Fleesh to be doing the damage. It shoots the Apon, but the Apon doesn't even go down. Right on the other side, Dimitri's Fleesh didn't necessarily do the most either. Trying to buff up the Fleesh here inside the Muffin Man. Can they turn this around? Slowly but surely, the Ranger and the front line are doing so. Apon does end up falling, but the backup from that Archos here for Muffin Man is just providing too much sustain for Dimitri Syndicate to be able to get through. The Muffin Man is victorious here this time. Over to the NPC round. It's going to be, again, Winnie Monarch leading the charge. Air and Shock looking pretty good so far. Got the Fighter, Scion, and the Empath buff. So, not only some high horsepower in terms of damage, but a little bit of extra shielding is going to go a long way alongside the dodge chance. Meanwhile, OLASH is going to be relying pretty heavy on nature and earth, so that has a very tanky and a team really reliant on doing some solid heals over time here, and maybe extending this to maybe even the overtime pulses to try and let that do the damage and finishing the job. With that, second in the lobby so far, so good. Air Earth with Scion and Empath here for Atomo. Nyx Hype, Rogue Revenant. Meanwhile, for Formig, Fighters, Templars, and Empaths, rather balanced out composition. Same idea coming out here for the Muffin Man. Dimitri Syndicate heavy on the Empaths, but got the Verdant proc as well. And then just Simon at the bottom as of this moment with Toxic and Air. But let's see, what's Formig up to? We just saw Muffin Man, what's Nyx up to? Going up against, so let's see as one goes. Even though they're 2 places apart, they are only 2 health apart. So a very, very close battle in this instance. The Rogue Revenant's fully loaded here for Nyx Hype. Meanwhile here, can they make this balanced composition work? If there's any team that can just out-tank the Rogues, it would probably be this, but I'm very, very scared looking at that Rampy on the side of Nyx. It's about to pop off, and it looks like just by auto attacks alone, they've been able to shred this. This Rampy ult on top of it is just going to be the icing on the cake. And sure enough, they are going to tear right on through. You see, basically, nobody on the side of Nyx Hypes has even gone down, and they don't even necessarily have a healer. Big damage coming on to as Nyx just absolutely demolishes that fight. Atomo, what are you up to? Going up against just Simon. Let's take a look at this one. Haven't rode along with either of these players just yet. Empath, Scion, Enchanter for the side of Atomo. Meanwhile, just Simon going to be picking up the Rogues, the Bulwarks, the Empaths with a rather balanced composition around Nature, Air, and Toxic. Of course, the Toxic does slowly but surely whittle your team away over time. I do believe it is the 1% of your max health. Never mind, that is if it was an item, but this here with the healing for the healing for 300 and then 20% pure damage upon death is going to be kind of crazy here. As we dive on through towards this bunker composition, we do see the TNT and the squeeze in the back line getting buffed up by that Appon. But can they hold the line long enough for the squeeze to start finding some value? Those are some low health bars on the red side, but not enough for the squeeze to get the reset. Can they burst through? So far they've been able to. The dust proc is going to make things a little bit interesting here. Red hanging on by a thread. Here comes the squeeze one more time. Not enough low health bars. Good stun coming up for the Appon right as it dies. But that Forest is still alive. The Forest is toxic as well. And they're going to be able to plow on through. Atomo will fall 48 HP as of this moment, assuming this is accurate. Nope, not quite. 58 HP, rather. As we go into the carousel one more time here, Winnie Monarch still completely flawless here in this game, sitting at 100. That second is extremely contested, and it's just pretty much very, very close from there. Nobody getting completely nuked down. Nobody in the bubble by any means just yet. But as we can see with that win streak, Winnie's drone is absolutely huge. I love that bronze look on that on Hilda. Looks very, very cute, very, very cute, very, very, very strong. Speaking of Winnie, what are you up to? Winnie and Shush. So 8 natures now here for Shush. Doesn't necessarily have the bulwarks really to back it up in terms of tank, though. Got up to 9, so that is actually kind of crazy. We don't see this too often. Nature units now deal 8% of their missing health damage as energy damage to one closest enemy. We do not see that very often at all, to the point where she's even really willing to put the lesser Fleesh onto the board just to get the buff. We'll have to see if this ends up paying off. It's going to fall pretty much immediately, and that's going to allow for that squeeze to get the resets on its Mega ability, so that could be problematic. Granted, Shush does have the Adordo in the back to at least do a little bit of healing alongside the Ferromate for a little bit of interruption once these Omegas come through. And it looks like actually, well, his Shush might be cooking a little bit, and they're cooking with grass because they are going to be able to tear through this squad here. The air shocks have fallen. Winnie Monarch going to take their first bit of damage here in this lobby from the full nature composition coming out here from I don't see it too often, but it was absolutely effective that time. As we take a look at, let's see what Nyx is up to. Nyx and just Simon. Rogue Revenant once again going to be played. This time it's going to be, of course, Nyx piloting that one alongside the toxic, heavy toxic composition here from just Simon. And I'm not calling it broken. No, it's just the affinity they've gone for. I like what Just Simon is doing, though. They have the Crunk and the Cardillo in the back line, ready to catch these rogues as they dive on through. My eyes are going to be on the left-hand side of this arena, though. Looking at the Forest, it is fully loaded and is probably the heaviest carry here on the side of Just Simon. If it gets focused down, it has no backup, and with the ramp feet going up to the skies, it is immediately going to be able to delete it, which means Just Simon is going to be down to 32, I believe. A massive victory here for Nyx from Team Hype to be able to get such a definitive and decisive victory here. But we might be seeing our first people on Death's Door, in the bubble, or on the hot seat, however you want to call it. How did Muffin Man do in their game versus, I believe it was either, or I guess there's a few different games going on here. Quickly gonna see. No, Muffin Man does end up winning that one. So hangs on. And it's going to be Dimitri Syndicate down in the bottom as of this moment, but nobody going to be getting eliminated, or nobody on the hot seat just yet. But again, as we hop into yet another NPC round, let's take a look through the field and see how everybody is doing. Of course, Winnie Monarch, very balanced composition here, loaded up on the squeeze, and does have that Jokul in a very threatening position. Meanwhile, of course, Nyx Hype rocking the Rogue Revenant with a heavy emphasis onto Dust. Otomo got a heavy emphasis on Dust for Dust. That's actually kind of crazy. What kind of bonuses do you get, of course, for that? Where all allies in Radius get empowered attacks, so that is going to be devastating, assuming all of those Illuvials are kind of clumped up a little bit. Get the bonus damage on your attacks towards your TNT or your squeeze. That could be kind of scary. For Megan fourth with the rather balanced composition with maybe a little bit more of an emphasis on the fighters. Shush, of course, heavy nature. Bloom as well. That is scary. Just Simon heavy on the toxic, but rather balanced otherwise. Wildfire with the heavy tank line here for Muffin Man. Trying to time you out. Meanwhile, heavy empaths here for Dimitri. We're going to ride with our top two. Of course, Rogue Revenant coming out once again here for Nick Hype. Meanwhile, Winnie trying to crush this thing with a mixture of Scions, Empaths, and Enchanters. And of course, that Polar Bear for some pretty decent fighter damage. Does have at least the first buff here, so it is getting a little bit of bonus attack speed in that regard. But there are a lot of very threatening units that are ready to just rip through this team. Let's see how it goes. Who's going to catch the rogue? It's going to be going right onto the Quinks and that the Kuka. So it gets dove right onto it. They don't die immediately. The Rampy is going to barely get that shield in time to get that Omega off. It is finally going to fall, but it at least took a few with them. The Polar Bear extremely low. One more Omega. Tries to chomp onto that Rake. It's going to be able to sustain for at least a little bit. It will eventually fall. It's up to the Rhoda and the Arctace to go against the rest here. And watch out, that Penguin is still pretty much full HP. Arctace going to take the skies one more time, but it's dropping everything basically right onto the Quinks, which is going to allow for the rest of the rogues to come back, take care of the Arctace. Winnie going to end up losing that one, and Nick Hype will be taking the lead here in this lobby. Muffin Man and Dimitri down at the bottom. Watch this one here, because I'm very curious how this heavy tank style coming out here from Muffin Man is going to hold up. 5 Bulwarks, 4 Empaths, 3 Aegis. This is about as tanky of a squad that you can get, even with it not being heavy on Earth. Meanwhile, on the other side, still plenty of damage with that air and dust style. And they do have the 3 Earth Alluvials on the board as well here for Tomo. At least add a little bit of extra tank here. We'll have to see how this one goes. The Archos is going to be tucked away nicely in the corner. Has the health augment on top of it as well. They really don't want this thing to fall. The Apon is going to stun that Revo mid-roll, but you got to watch out for that Octius in the corner here from Atomo. If it's left alone, it is just going to be raining down pain for the rest of this battle. The Periox in the background is going to barely hang on. No, the reset is actually going to put it to rest, which means Muffin Man going up against 4 with just the Archos. That is not going to go well for them, and that will be an elimination here in this lobby. Atomo has killed the Muffin Man, as the Muffin Man falls in 7th this time. Dimitri has also fallen here after that one, and now everybody else, for the most part, is actually still pretty well off. Next lowest is 32, so hangs on for now. Let's see if Winnie can turn this one back around. Had a very fantastic early game, went flawless for so long, but you kind of see that maybe the spending of the credits has slowed them down ever so slightly. Still got a fantastic team, and I want to see this do well here, but you gotta watch out. That is a pretty scary, relentless Zephyrlynx coming on through. This thing definitely packs a punch. Here comes the Arctis all the way through, going towards the Periox as well. Able to take it out with the help of the squeeze. Big win here for Winnie Monarch. They can just deal with this Lynx, and they're absolutely going to be able to. An extremely beautiful and decisive win here for Winnie Monarch, but Formig is still going to be hanging on in this lobby. Not eliminated, but they will be in the hot seat. Does just Simon join them, I wonder? I'll have to see in a moment's time. It kind of looks like it. A bad loss could be the end of it. Does Atomo happen to get their second elimination in a row? And then who's Formig going up against here? Going up against, so... I mean, the chance of elimination, even though it's just the 1 HP difference, is there. This is where I wish I had split screen, but that would be so hard to follow, that wouldn't even be funny. So we'll see Formig in action once again here, but this time up against Shush, who's going to be, again, balanced composition focused around nature and bloom. Has the 4 blooms as well, so very scary. The amount of health regeneration is going to be crazy on those bloom units, but again, it's specifically to the bloom units itself, not necessarily the entire team. But we're seeing those that are blooming are absolutely flourishing. They are absolutely crushing this battle, and they will be knocking out Formig this time by. Now, what about just Simon? That happened so quickly. Maybe we can hop on over and see how that went down. Just Simon hangs on and gets a little bit of damage onto Atomo. So, your top 5 are here in the carousel. What do they pick? Just Simon's got first dibs. Going to be taking the Penguin off the board. Has that attack augment as well. Going to be nice. Atomo going to be taking over the Alfie, which does have that empath augment on as well. Going to be able to possibly sell the Alfie and just put that empath augment onto something else. Winnie taking a Penguin as well. And then, I mean, Nyx has been going for, no, he's been the one going for Rogue Revenant, so just opting to snag that Cling for the sake of the purple fragment. At least personally, I do not see a lot of people go for 4 toxic, but I mean, Simon able to make it work to at least get into the top 5, but again, being on the hot seat is going to be a little scary. Something we, of course, do see a lot is this Rogue Revenant style, and I like that this Lilura, first off, is hollow and looking nice and spiffy, but it has the 2 Guardians grids. I'll tell you what, I know in my augment video on YouTube, I was talking about how good this thing is. And it's still the point where you can just stack them and be extremely happy. So fair enough there from Nyx. Of course, Shush going for the 9 Nature 4 Bloom. I feel like we again never see that, but it's been doing well for the last little bit. Winnie Monarch hanging on 6 air, 6 air, 2 shock, 3 fire. Heavy firepower. Now, who is Simon going up against? Sure enough, it is going to be Winnie. So, let's see if this toxic style can tank on through this rather balanced composition, which has a lot of firepower, really reliant
on both this ramp fight as well as the Jokul, but there is still this Octius here from Winnie that is here ready to play and maybe pick up some last hits up against this Forest, up against this Rip Lance. The fighters are very, very scary. The slashing has come to play as well. Doesn't necessarily have the items it needs to snowball, but this means you have 3 high damage carries ready to rock. But the Rip Lance, its pathing has just kind of gotten in the way of itself. It finally gets itself into the fight, and it's going after Jokul, takes care of it. The Octius is going to be the next to fall. The Ramp Fight ult coming out from Winnie Monarch is going to tear through at least a few of the tank members. But it's a battle on 2 fronts here. They're finally going to meet in the middle, and it's in perfect position for the Ramp Fight to go to the skies, do some pretty decent damage. Can they get onto that Rip Lance, though? The Rip Lance gets the shank. It's the Rip Lance versus the Arctase for the win. To the skies they go. And it is going to be actually the Rip Lance falling in an incredible fashion. The Arctase taking to the skies and allowing for that Inferno to do just a little bit of extra damage alongside the Carpet Bomb might have been enough to clutch out that round, which now puts just Simon on the hot seat, going up against Nick Hype's Rogue Revenants. I mean, this is such a strong team coming out here from both sides, and we see the positioning coming out once again here for just Simon with all of the heavy tank line sitting in the back, ready to catch these rogues. But it's just going to be a matter of how long can that Rip Lance, can that Forest stay alive versus these absolute units on the other end. Nick Hypes dives on through. Where are the DPS? I like the fact that there is the Rogue Implants onto the Rip Lance, so it gets out of dodge, so it's not going to be the first initial target of some of these rogues. But the Forest is extremely low as the rest of the rogues come back to try and take it down. The Rip Lance is absolutely getting shredded. There's absolutely no chance it got crit like that, and it is going to be very, very brutal here for just Simon. I like the idea, but it is not going to be enough this time, and they will end up falling, which now puts Atomo into the hot seat, going up against Ole SH or Ole Shush. Force 9 nature for Bloom. You've got the Wildfire on top of that for a little bit of extra damage and sustain as well, thanks to this Blazonite on the side of Shush. So one extra factor for Atomo to take into consideration, but they do have the 6 Scions. If they can get their abilities off, it is going to hurt. But can they actually keep themselves in a position to do so? At least this isn't a burst damage composition, not a Rogue Revenant style here. Because Ole Shush is more so for the long game. Can they out damage the heals with just pure burst damage? We'll have to see. The Alfie firing on through directly onto the healer, and it goes through the front line. It goes through the Forest. You might have heals, but you can't deal with the burst. But there's still 3 more on the side of Shush. Can they hang on, or is Atomo going to be able to hang on for a little bit longer? But that charm just made it so rough here for the healer to try and do anything. It's the Blazonite versus the world, and I don't think it's going to be able to do so. Not this time. Atomo going to hang on, which now puts 2 of our players into the hot seat. Winnie Monarch going for, of course, the 6 air. Got the 3 fires, 2 Inferno, Dust, Frost. Such a solid mixture against, of course, this burst damage style. But at the same time, Nick Hypes versus Shush. I mean, this composition was meant to tank. Let's see. How good can it tank? Probably one of the burstiest combos in the game. Blazonite and the Dordo up in the fronts. Double a Dordo even to try and heal as much as possible. Can Shush live this? That's a lot of burst damage, and I don't see those green health bars really going down at all. There goes the Forest. There goes the Blotto. Or the Crunk, rather. The other Crunk's going to be next to fall. The Blazonite and the Adordo on the left-hand side have been untouched, but the rest of the team is not so lucky. It looks like Shush is going to end up falling here as soon as this Ramp Bite takes to the skies one more time. Blazonite versus the world. Blasonite will not be strong enough to hold. So that will be a Tomo falling here in the... Not a Tomo, that'll be Shush rather, falling in the 4th position. Atomo did beat Winnie Monarch, so Winnie is now down to 25. But again, Nick Hype's Rogue Revenant's leading the charge. In a rather dominant fashion this time because it did not look like anybody else in this lobby went for Rogue Revenant. And that seems to be the one way things kind of get balanced because so many people are very, very comfortable and know about Rogue Revenant. There's often times where maybe 2 or 3 people are going for it in a lobby and then nobody gets strong. But the benefit here for Nick's Hype, nobody else went for it. So they have a very, very devastating squad as of right now. And I'd argue that the burst damage from Atomo is not enough for the burst damage of Nick that they would end up just crushing through. And then Winnie had a ton of steam early, or not literally steam, but a lot of firepower early with a very early shock style with a lot of airs. But it seems to be kind of slowing down at least a little bit the later this goes on. Either way, it's getting them a 3rd place at the very, very least, but we'll have to see. So Nyx and Winnie are going to be battling each other. Atomo is going up against Nyx. So this is the one that I'm going to be watching. Again, going up against the Ghost here, so... Nick's not going to be able to necessarily position specifically for this composition because he's going up against Winnie. But I really want to see if this composition here for Atomo can tank through the crazy Rogue Revenant style that we're seeing come out here from Nick. They even have the Guardian's Grid onto the Alfie, or onto the Sinalf, so they really want this thing to live. They're putting a lot of eggs onto the Sinalf to really be the one to carry the squad. Where is the beam? Going to be firing directly at the Quinks, and it is immune as well, so that charm is not going to do a thing. And I think that Atomo might have enough here to actually tank through and look rather convincing. This very well could be the answer. We might have ourselves a game on our hands here as we are now in the battle of our top 3. Winnie going to be picking up the bear, maybe trying to look to see if they can get that Jotan before, with the one like final stand. One more Guardian's Grid here for Tomo is going to be great at dealing with that rogue style coming out here from Nick. What does Nick opt to pick up? There are a couple of damage opportunities, couple of tankier opportunities as well. Opting for the damage with a little bit of a safety net here with that Phoenix Surge. Of course, it does give you a little bit of health and a little bit of tank, but that 40, or that shield that triggers at 40% is definitely a lifesaver in certain scenarios. Throw that onto one of their critical carries. Or heck, even throw it onto the tank, and that could be a lifesaver. And sure enough, there it is. Winnie Monarch does find the amount of polar bears necessary to get the job done, and they are going to put as much as possible, I would imagine, into this thing. A little bit of health, give it the Enchanter as well for some Omega power. That bite is going to hurt like hell, but we'll have to see if Winnie Monarch can burst through this corner, this bunker composition with a rather tanky backline. We'll have to see as they dive on through. Grand fight right into the very, very back. Where is the charm? Of course, the immunity here on that Sinalf is going to be clutch. And the ramp fight goes down before the ult comes out. This bunker is going to absolutely stay alive. The Mammoth's just going to straight up yeet that Jotan right out of the way. But is that going to be enough? It looks like it is. Which now gives us Nyx versus Atomo, and we need to get out of dodge as fast as possible as the bug happens. See if we can get right back in for the possible final match here. Definitely want to see how this one ends up. Hopefully we get in just in time. Success, we made it. Right in the nick of time. Nick Hype, Atomo, possible final time here. Dives on through. Where's the ramp fight? It's going to get stunned up for just a moment, but it's not really taking that much damage. Never mind, some big burst damage coming out, but here comes the ramp fight one more time. It chunks the entire center field of the team, but here comes the burst damage coming out from that self one more time. Where is the the Lulora is hanging on. Look for that Umber as well on the side of Nick's Hype. It goes strong, and it is going to be able to burst on through. A valiant effort coming out here from Atomo, but it is not going to be enough. Nick Hype is going to take those Rogues and Revenants and just prove the field right as to how crazy that composition is. But a valiant effort from the field, especially to Atomo, for getting themselves in the second place. Nick, of course, winning alongside Atomo and Winnie Monarch to round out your top three. But with that being said, of course, there is probably still another hour or two of play here in this tournament. However, I will be calling it a night right here, right now. I have the absolute pleasure of being able to commentate the IPL 500 for sure day one tomorrow on Illuvium's channel. So I'm going to be resting up, save my voice at least a little bit here. Don't want to go too far too long and then get myself sick for tomorrow. That'd be a bad time. But the stats as of this moment, I do want to take a look and see before I go what it ends up looking like. Swing on through here. So Squawk, I believe they may be leading the charge, but they've also, I believe, already made it. Crizin, I believe, is up there as well. Scorpion Zada is a name I am not familiar with, but good seeing them doing a solid job with just the 2 wins alone, putting them that high up right now. Costa Perez looks new. Aoki So, new to me, but doing well. FRK Phantom getting up there. Patch Tourist. Winnie is in there as well. Heron Guard getting up there. Dr. Spoon. Alnert. A couple of names that I recognize. Axel and PLG getting themselves up there. Illuviborn getting up there. So that is your top 16 as of this moment, but of course I'm not again going to mention about who exactly moves on or not, because there are many factors that can determine what and who actually moves on here. Whew. But that was a fun little warm-up, and I'm very, very excited for this weekend's action. Should be an absolute blast. IPL 500, of course, happening tomorrow. It starts at like 10 my time, but I believe what did it say, 2 UTC? I believe that was the case. So it'll be a bit of an early morning for myself, but I am looking forward to it nonetheless. Of course, big thank you to everybody tuning into this live. I hope that you enjoyed your time. Regardless of which platform you're on, if you happen to, again, to have enjoyed your time, I do this every Tuesday and Friday, one way or another. Especially throughout the month of August, we are covering Illuvium, and going into September, that very well might still be the case as well. We'll have to see. Tell you what, personally, I'm kind of leaning towards a yes for that, so definitely more Illuvium action to come. And of course, make sure if you haven't also done so already, make sure you have Illuvium's channels followed, whether it be on X, Twitch, or YouTube, because that is where I'll be casting tomorrow, and where the main footage for the tournament shall be. But again, with that being said, I'll be calling it a night before I gas myself out too much. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a good night.